Healing Hands Health Society presents Dental Webinar Series. We have planned a series dental webinars to keep you abreast of current practice. This series on prosthodontics will be via Zoom, Facebook Live. Presenters are drawn from dental schools in the USA, private practitioners from around the world. To register for future webinars, visit www.hhands.org/dental-training. For future inquiries, contact Facilitator.
He's an alumnus of the University of Michigan, and he's no stranger to dental webinar series. I'm just going to say here that he's the president of the International College of Prosthodontists, a past president of the Academy of Prosthodontics, and a founder of the Future Leaders Workshop Series that teaches leadership management skills to early and mid-career professionals. Sree is the current president of the MIT Sloan Club of San Diego and chair-elect of the MIT Sloan School of Management Alumni Board. He's a grateful recipient of the 2019 Margaret McVicar Award from the MIT Alumni Association. Dr. Sree Koka, you are welcome once again to Dental Webinar Series.
Thank you, Uvoh. I appreciate that very, very much. Let me now get my screen going. There we go. Now, before I start, a couple of things. First, Uvoh, thank you again for this invitation. I love doing this, and it's very kind of you to invite me back to do this again. The second thing is, for those of you that have been listening to Dr. Driscoll, I cannot impress upon you how wise the advice he's giving you is. Okay, so I want you to understand that what you just heard is gold dust in terms of advice and guidance about how to think and about how to plan your patient's care. It's really brilliant stuff. And I hope you get that. I hope you really pay attention to it. We're going to turn away from clinical for a bit now. I know we're going to come back to it with Dr. Favarani after me. But now we're going to talk about something that's philosophical in a way, but not necessarily about dentistry, but dentistry certainly can be folded into this. But it's really about what matters to you. What would you like to do with the rest of your life? If you're pondering what your life might look like, a lot of it's in your control, some of it isn't. And how might you think about preparing yourself to have the biggest impact in the way that you would like to have that impact? Okay. I will tell you that as dentists, we are really good at critiquing processes. We're very good technically. And in this paper by Argyris, he would call that single loop learning. If you stuck in front of us a workflow, a digital workflow in dentistry, and you said, think about ways to improve this, we'd be really, really good at it. If you asked us to stand back and look at our own role in that workflow, we're not so good. And Argyris calls this double loop learning. And today is going to be about double loop learning. And the previous webinar I gave, there's only a tiny bit of overlap between this and that one. But you will see some of the similar themes, but you'll also get a lot of new information and new perspective, hopefully, that will help you going forward. Now, if you're on this call, you're one of the lucky ones. And I think that despite all the hardships and the struggles that you've probably had to overcome in your life, the fact that you're here means that you had the luck combined with the skill to get here. So, for example, 43% of the world does still not have access to the internet. So if you're listening to this, you're in the 57% of the world that does. And that is a huge socioeconomic advantage, right? So what does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean that you just say, oh, gee, I'm really lucky. It means that you understand that you have an obligation to give back. Steve Prefontaine was a middle distance runner from the US. And he has this quote. He says, to give anything less than your best is to sacrifice the gift that you've been given. And yeah, it's a little bit daunting, and it might seem hard that you have to try and give your best day in, day out. But why not? Why not aspire to that? And you you're here on this call on a weekend because you have that little special thing inside you that says, I want to be better. I want to make a bigger difference. And that's pretty neat to know that there's all these people out there listening that have this bug. So I'm going to suggest to you that life is actually a collection of decisions. And the game, when it comes to life, is about making the right decisions on the issues that are actually important. So there is a whole field of research just on this issue of decision making. If you make good decisions, you will make a bigger difference with your life, you'll be happier, and you'll impact other people in a more positive way. Now, this is a classic business school paper by Michael Porter. He's a professor from Harvard Business School. And he said, what is strategy? Everybody uses this word strategy, right? And we say that we're going to have a strategic plan, or that we have a strategy for success in our lives. And the success could be using different criteria. They could be material criteria, they could be other kinds of criteria. Porter suggests that if you're a business, I'm going to suggest if you're an individual and running your own practice, or running a department, or running a dental school, or running a residency program, you are trying to be the best that you can be, not only in your own eyes, but in the eyes of others, because the peer review is really important. Right? So how do you become different? And not only how do you become different, but how do you become different in a way that lasts over a long period of time? Let's say that Dr. Driscoll is running, which he does, and has for a long time, run a world-class residency program at the University of Maryland. He gets the best applicants, and then from that group of the best applicants of that group want to come to Maryland. Why does that happen? And what's the first thing you're going to do when you decide you want to run a world-class residency program yourself? You're going to go and look and see, what did the best programs do? What does Dr. Driscoll do to make this program so amazing? And then what are you going to do? You're going to copy it, right? Or if you're doing something that's really good, someone's going to copy you. So it's not actually hard to be different in the short run. But what Porter says separates the best is that they can do something that is different, that lasts. And it lasts not just a few years, but it lasts over generations. Now, does IBM do today what IBM did 100 years ago? No. But why does IBM still have this special je ne sais quoi that is one of the world's most amazing organizations? And we'll talk a little bit about what makes that happen as we go forward. So how do you make these decisions then? If life is a collection of decisions and the goal is to be different in a way that is sustainable, how do you make those decisions? Whether it's for you, whether it's for your practice, your department, your team. And I'm going to argue that those really aren't different entities, because almost everything that we accomplish today is because we're part of a team, and so much more can be accomplished when we're part of a team than on our own. So, philosophical proposal for you. This is an idea that I've talked about for a few years, but it is called the sweet spot. And the way you get ahead and your team gets ahead in a way that matters and in a way that lasts is you manage your sweet spot. So let's say when you're born, x-axis here is age, y-axis here is energy on the left, wisdom on the right. Let's say that when you're born, you have no wisdom. You have a little bit of instinct, you have a little bit of intuition, but wisdom comes from two things, right? Wisdom comes from new experiences, but it also comes from learning from those new experiences. If you have new experiences, but you don't learn anything from them, you're experienced. You're not actually wiser. If you learn from those new experiences, and Edison is the one that said, I learned far more from the stuff that didn't work than from the stuff that did, you become wiser. So you can see how in the middle of your life, your wisdom accelerates quickly because you're having lots of new experiences, you're learning from them. As you get later in life, the wisdom can still increase because you have time to reflect still and learn, but you've got fewer new experiences about which you're learning. So it begins to plateau. On the other hand, when you're born, you've got all this energy, right? If you look back at how you could just play all day when you were a 5-year-old or an 8-year-old, and you think, oh my gosh, the thought of that is absolutely exhausting now. But back then, you had all the energy in the world. But as you go through life, well, yep, For those of you that aren't 54 yet, like me, trust me, you begin to lose some of the energy that you used to have, and obviously at the end of life, you hit the big zero. Now, if you put these two curves together, there's a place where they cross, and that's the place that I'm going to argue is the sweet spot of your life. Right? And this is the pictorial view of it. If I had to put it into words, I would say it's that time in your life when you've got sufficient energy, you've still got lots of energy to use the wisdom that you have. And you actually have sufficient wisdom to use the energy that you have. So it's the place in your life where you are pretty close to being able to maximize both having a good level of wisdom and still having a lot of energy. Now, an organization can have a sweet spot too. So we tend to hire people based upon technical skills. Okay, this person's a really good dentist, or this person is a great lab technician. They can perform this procedure that we want to bring into our practice or our school that we haven't had before. Well, that's great. We almost never hire someone based upon whether they're in their sweet spot or close to it, or their wisdom level. But if we did, we might actually have a different kind of organization. In reality, this wisdom curve is not smooth, right? So it has kinks in it. And the kinks, I will argue, based upon my definition, the kinks come when you do the biggest new things. And then the kink really comes as you learn from what you just experienced when you did that really big new thing. So, I'm born and raised in England. When I moved to America, moving to another country is a big thing. Getting married, getting divorced, having children, changing jobs, choosing a career. These are the things that are the monster changes in your life. And these are the things, therefore, that bring you the greatest amount of wisdom afterwards. Why is this important, again, to be in the sweet spot? Well, again, this is where you will be able to be the best decision maker. This is the time of your life. When you're on the left side of the sweet spot, you've got all this energy, but you're using this energy without that much wisdom. So you're making lots of decisions, but they're probably not high quality decisions because you don't have the wisdom to make high quality decisions yet. When you're on the right hand side of the sweet spot, yes, you've got tons of wisdom, but you don't have a lot of energy. You just don't care as much anymore. Or even if you do care, you don't have that drive that you used to have to put into it. So you're making fewer decisions, but they're high quality. When you're in the sweet spot, that's when you're making the highest number of good quality decisions. So the game, what I'm going to try and tell the youngsters in this audience, if you want to make your life count, and if you want to do something useful with the rest of your life, is to figure out how to stretch your sweet spot so that you get into it as early as possible in your life. So this basically is, how do I change my wisdom? How do I become wiser sooner? How do I keep getting wiser longer? How do I accelerate my rate of becoming wise? Basically, how do I change the shape of my wisdom curve? So this is the example I've given you so far, but let's just say you could stretch your sweet spot and get into it sooner. Two things happen. Not only do you get into it sooner, you actually get into it at a time when you have more energy. So let's just, for argument's sake, say you stretch your sweet spot and you get to the center of your sweet spot 3 to 5 years earlier. I'm just using numbers here to make my point, right? You actually might enter your sweet spot 8 to 10 years earlier. So stop and think for a minute. If you knew 10 years ago what you know today, would your life be different? I bet it would, okay? For most of us, we would have a different life today if we had done things that allowed us to get into our sweet spot soon. So the rest of this talk, this is actually a 2.5 hour talk in its full extent. I've picked bits and pieces out for you today. But the rest of this is really about reflections that stretch my sweet spot, and hopefully then they can stretch yours. Adam Grant is the youngest ever full professor at Wharton Business School. And he wrote a book a few years ago called Give and Take. It's a great book. Right? And in this book, Grant makes the case that each of us is one of 3 kinds of people. So it can be situational, but in general, one of it were either givers, matchers, or takers. So let's say I come up to Uvoh and I say, hey, Uvoh, here's $50. I just feel like giving you $50 so you can go and do something useful with it and have fun with it. I'm a giver. I've just sort of given this something away spontaneously without being asked. If Uvoh takes that $50, he didn't ask for it, but if he says, Sree, thanks so much, that's really nice of you. He takes that $50, but he doesn't have in him the interest in reciprocating. He's a taker. Now, if he does have an interest in reciprocating, but he's the type of person who thinks, oh, that was really nice of Sree to give me $50. I want to give him something back, but either subconsciously or consciously, he's the kind of person that gives back something that is of equal value, approximately. He's a matcher. Now, if he gives something back, but there's no limit, he doesn't really worry about whether it's $50 or $100. He just wants to, or even more. He is just wants to give something back without any consideration of matching. Then he's a giver as well. And we know from the work that Uvoh's done that he's an amazing giver. Okay, but in this case, I'm just using him to describe the difference between givers, matchers, and takers. So what Grant does is he asks two simple questions. He says, who loses in the business world, givers, matchers, or takers? And normally, if we were sitting in a classroom together, I would ask you to raise your hands and say if you think it's a giver, a matcher, or a taker. And it turns out that givers are most frequently the losers in the business world. Next question, who wins in the business world? Again, I'd ask you to raise your hand and say givers, matchers, or takers. And at this point, normally people are choosing matchers or takers. But the answer here is that givers are most frequently winners as well. And it turns out, and you can read the book, Give and Take, it turns out that there's a kind of giving that gets you used, abused, and trodden on, and you lose. And there's kinds of giving that allow you to win, to really get ahead in the world. You can still be this person that gives and be very successful. Another model I want to teach you is one that is taught extensively at MIT in the business school, and it's called the three lenses. And this model basically argues that every organization, department, team, practice, whatever it is, functions through three lenses. And one of these lenses typically dominates. Okay? So one of the lenses here is called the strategic design lens. Organizations that are dominated by the strategic design lens, they tend to live in the future. They are looking at data. They are predicting the future. They are trying to be where they think the world is going to be when they get there. In ice hockey, you have this story where Wayne Gretzky said, I always used to try to skate to where I thought the puck was going to be. And that's no different for those of us that play a lot of football or soccer, right? We're running to where we think the ball is going to be. And that's the strategic design lens dominated organization. So the color given to this is blue, because sort of blue ocean thinking ahead. Another lens that exists in all organizations is the political lens. And the political lens dominated organization tends to be one that lives in the present. Because this organization is dominated by relationships. What happens in this organization is based upon who knows who and what the power differentials are and what can get done today based upon those relationships. So the color given to this lens is red, because red is the color of blood and the color of power. The third lens is this lens. And you're probably saying, yeah, but I don't see it. And that's on purpose. The third lens is the cultural lens. Organizations dominated by the cultural lens tend to be organizations that live in the past. Their traditions drive them very strongly. And the reason why the cultural lens is given the color white is because when you write white on white, you can't see it. And culture is very hard to see. So, strategic lens is about the future, the political lens is about the present, and the cultural lens is about the past. Now, just like I said, Porter talked about strategy, and we all use the word strategy, but it would be hard to define. What's culture? You know, it's another word that everybody uses, but it's hard to define. So I'm going to give you a definition now. And that is that culture is defined by the behavior of the senior leaders. I'm going to come back to this theme later on, because for you, as dentists, you are leaders. You are going to be looked up up to, and you're going to be asked to lead subliminally or very overtly at different times in your life. And how you behave sets the tone. Now, which of these is more important? Well, I'm not going to talk about the political lens too much. But Peter Drucker, a famous leadership guru, said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And as many organizations and many leaders would say the same thing, which is, it is the culture of your organization that is the most important element in determining your success. Okay, so as you think about the rest of your life, you have to decide what kind of culture is the one that you will be successful in, you want to be successful in, and then make that an incredibly critical component of your decision making about what you do with your life and with whom you spend your time. Okay? Now, I'm one of these people that believes that being a good person has to matter. I'm going to tell you a story. There's a very, very famous physician at Mayo Clinic who is a world leader in his field. Now, Mayo Clinic is in the middle of absolutely nowhere. Okay, there's no big city life at all. The winters are absolutely terrible, and it's really hard to get to. And when you're there, there isn't much to do because it's not a big city. So this guy has been there and built his career there. But I said to him, have you ever been recruited away? He said, oh yeah, I've been recruited away often. I've been offered wonderful jobs all over the world. Very high profile, prestigious positions. So you know what comes next? I said, well, how come you never left? He said, oh, he goes, a lot of these other places, when you go there, you get used and abused. He goes, at Mayo Clinic, if you're a good person, it still matters here. So, you know, he had a system in place that will allow him to make a decision about whether he was going to stay or go. And this decision wasn't about anything material. It was about the culture. And this resonated with him. I will tell you, fish rots from the head down. So if you're working in a group and you're the boss, let's say you work in a practice, and you come to work and every day you're frustrated because your employees are doing X when you've asked them to do Y. Your employees are not the problem. You are. They're doing Y because you allow them to do Y. And this is a hard part about leadership, and it comes back to that double loop learning. You have to look at your own role in this process. Napoleon said there are no bad armies, only bad officers. You know, your employees do what you tell them to do or what you allow them to do. And either one, you control. This is a really important figure. I hope you get something out of this. So it talks about plateaus of adult development, 3 plateaus. The lowest plateau in terms of complexity is the socialized mind. This person is someone who's very team-oriented, very aligned. They actually look for others to give them direction about how to perform, how to behave, how to function. I sort of joke that this is who you are in high school, because if you don't find ways to fit in, you get ostracized, right? And so you develop this socialized mind. It helps you fit in. Then there's another plateau called a self-authoring mind. People who live here tend to be very agenda-driven. They have their own compass and their own frame, and they are really good at solving problems. And they're pretty independent. And I'm going to bet that 95% of the people on this call listening have a self-authoring mind. At some point, you decided to be a dentist. Your agenda is, I am going to be a dentist. I'm going to be a prosthodontist, whatever it is. So what'd you do? You went to find out what it takes. How do I solve this problem about becoming a dentist? Oh, well, to get into dental school, I'll use the US as an example. Oh, I need to have a good grade point average, so I'm competitive. So you study hard, you do what it takes to get that grade point average. And when you've got that grade point average, you can, right? Oh, I need to do some volunteering, so I look good in my application. Volunteer, check the box. I need to do some research, check the box. I need to do some shadowing at a dental office. Do some shadowing, check the box. Because we're good at that stuff. And when we become successful, we're really, really susceptible as humans to thinking that that's the way to do it. I will tell you that almost all of my leadership mistakes, and I've made some big mistakes, have been because of getting too confident that my way was the way to do it. All right? My own compass, my own frame led me down a path to failure when it came to leadership. Where I'm trying to get to is this last plateau of the self-transforming mind. Here, you stop solving problems and you realize that your job is to find problems. And that's actually a very different mindset. You also accept, when you have a self-authoring mind, you think the world is linear. You think it's very objective, that A plus B equals C. And if somehow C doesn't happen, that somebody else is the problem, or something else is the problem that's stopping C from happening. In reality, C is reality. Okay? And self-transforming mind people are really good at understanding that the world is full of contradictions. And instead of getting mad about them, they accept them. And they also learn that what they can do on their own as an independent person is minuscule to what they can achieve when they allow themselves to rely on other people for their own success, when they become interdependent. How many people have a self-transforming mind? Less than 1%. And 8 to 17% even get on the slope. I'm just trying to get on the slope. Okay? If you want to be sustainably different in a way that really matters, it's not about buying the latest scanner. All right? It's about having a mindset that allows you to make great decisions, to find the right problems that really matter. Being sustainably different is about getting a self-transforming mind, becoming wiser, getting to your sweet spot. So another way of looking at this is the socialized minds on the left. I am my relationships. I follow the rules. The one in the middle says, no, I'm independent. I make choices. This is about my identity. I'm trying to tell the world who I am. Whereas the self-transforming mind, that 1%, remember, they can hold many ideas, even competing ideas, even ideas that are diametrically opposed. They can embrace the paradox. I'll tell you that humans are tribal. We like to be around people like ourselves. That can be very, very good in certain ways. It can also be really bad. I mean, you think about when you're born, first question is, are you a boy or a girl when you're born? But almost the second piece of identity that you get is your family. And then the third piece of identity you get is, what nationality are you? And the amount of harm that has been done in the world because of our allegiance to our nationality is astonishing. And that's a purely human-made border, right? And a reason to think that you are different from someone else and that you need to compete in a way that harms the other. Darwin said it is not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most responsive to change. And again, the best way to be responsive to change is to create a person within you that embraces double loop learning and a self-transforming mind. Because then you will be not just the one most responsive to change, you will actually be predicting the change and making the change that others respond to. Okay, when you are self-authoring, you can still be pretty responsive to change because you're smart enough to look ahead a little bit and see what's coming. But you're not the person that's actually making the change. Now, does everyone get there? No, but if you could get there, oh my gosh, what a great way to spend the rest of your life. Now we're going to talk a little bit about credibility. Okay, this was told to me by a physician at Mayo Clinic who had been in the army for 20 years. And I love this line. He says, Sree, people will pay attention to what you inspect, not what you say you expect. People are not stupid. Okay, they know what you really care about. If you come into a practice as a patient, and on the sign on the wall is what every practice says, which is, our patients come first. Or if you're a dentist telling your employees that our patients come first. But what you really care about is the money. How much money you're making, what was the production of the practice. Patients can tell, you can tell. You have no credibility. So it doesn't matter what you say. What you actually look at is what matters. And I'm going to give you an example where I messed up. At the clinic, I used to start out I was chair during the recession. So I was very worried about financials and what was happening to our department. So I would start each quarterly staff meeting with a review of the financials and then move on to the patient satisfaction and other elements related to the employees. And after about the third meeting, one of the hygienists came up to me and she says, look, I know that when you take care of your patients, you really do care about your patients and they are your priority. But when you start these meetings talking about the money, you're sending the wrong message. You're saying that the money comes first. And I think that's a mistake. And she was absolutely right. So, again, I was saying one thing, but I was doing another. If you want a great book to start learning a little bit more about how to make a better difference with your life because of how you can lead people and yourself, get this book. It's called Good to Great. It's an easy read. Jim Collins, he's curious why some companies do really, really well. How do some companies go from good to great and others just go from good to bad or just stay good? So he assembles a research team. They look at publicly traded companies over a long period of time, and they find 11 or 12 that have beaten the stock market by 3 times and sustain this over 15 or 20 years. A long time, right? That's a sustainably different thing. And he asks his team to come back and tell him what it is that's special about these companies. And they come back and they say, they've got special leaders. He says, no, I don't think it's the leadership, because I think it's the strategy. What did they do strategically? Go away and look at the strategy. You're missing something. So they come back and they say, well, maybe there's something about the strategy, and here it is. But it really is about the leaders. So he finally gives in and he says, okay, I guess it is about the leaders. And in this book, they talk a little bit about what is the strategic side of these companies' success. And they talk a lot about what is the leadership side. And invariably, these companies were led by someone that they say is a level 5 leader. And in the book, they sort of describe what is this pyramid of level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? And it turns out that level 5 leaders aren't particularly necessarily have a higher IQ than anybody else. They don't have necessarily an MBA. They haven't been to the top business schools. What they have is 2 qualities. Okay? They have 2 qualities. And the first quality is that they never give up. Okay? And they're not going to let you give up. And the second thing is they're incredibly humble. They couldn't care less if they're famous or if they're well known or if they make a lot of money. This is about the company being successful and the people in the company being successful, not them. So if I were to rattle off the names of these leaders of these 11 companies, you will have heard of none of them except for one, and that's because that's the name of the company. In the US, it's called Walgreens. And so Cork Walgreen, right, it's a family business. Okay, but the other 10, you've never heard of them. They couldn't care less. So perseverance and humility are the 2 critical factors. What does this stand for? Well, this stands for, do you do what you say you will do? Think about the leaders you've had, who you find credible. Well, think about who's looking up to you. If you don't do what you say you will do, you will lose a tremendous amount of credibility. There is research, and if you ever read the Kuznets and Posner book on leadership, they will make the argument that this answer to this question, do you do what you say you will do, is the best predictor of your effectiveness as a leader, because it is the best predictor of your credibility. So again, you want to have a life that matters. It's going to be because of how you interact with other people, what you accomplish as a team, what you accomplish leading a team, and that's going to rely on you having credibility. You can build up credibility credits and debits, but I will tell you, it's pretty easy to lose a bunch of credits with 1 debit. You've got to be very careful when it comes to credibility. If you do have to hit that situation where you cannot do what you say you will do, then you need to be honest about it. And that's okay. Then you maintain your credibility. It's when you're faking it that it just doesn't work. All right, next question. Who are you? Are you who you think you are? Or are you who other people think you are? And I took this a few years ago as part of a little leadership workshop. We had a professor, there were 12 of us, and he asked us this question up front, and he says, if you're who you think you are, you say that because only you know how you feel, what you believe, what your childhood was, what your experiences are, why you do what you do. And if you say who you are, if you are who others think you are, then you're saying, well, you're defined by how the world perceives you. So when we did this, the 12 of us, 11 of us chose who you think you are, and 1 chose who others think you are. And after about a minute, the prof had all 11 of us moved over to join the other lady who had said who others think we are. And so here's a quick example for you. If I think that I'm a good driver of a car. But anyone who ever rides in a car with me says, oh my God, I'm never getting in this car again. I could die. Am I a good driver or a bad driver? I'm a bad driver. If Dr. Driscoll thinks that he's just an average prosthodontist, but his patients and his staff and his students and his peers say he is a world-class prosthodontist, which one is he? Doesn't matter what he thinks. He's a world-class prosthodontist. Now, for a split second here, you might begin to feel vulnerable that other people get to define who you are. Well, number one, get over it. They do. And number two, you still are in control, because how you behave or act is what defines what they think of you. So you're still in control. If you act like a jerk, then why would you expect people to think anything else other than he's a jerk? Okay? If you know what it means to be kind and compassionate and honest, go be these things if you want other people to think that that's who you are. Okay, I like this. This is a computer test. Taken many years, an experiment by Daniel Ariely. He used MIT college students, and he asked them to sit down at a computer, grab a hold of this circle, and pull it over until it was inside the square, and then let go. And as soon as they let go, another circle would come up, and they should do it again, and then again, and again, and again, as many times as they could in 5 minutes. Each time they got it inside the square, the computer would register that, and it would give them a point. Believe it or not, this test has been validated by how you control this little space here. If you make it just the right amount of space, this is something that if you are trying, you can do it. And if you're not trying, you can't do it so easily. So basically, this is a test to say, is somebody trying? So inside the square, you get a point. If you're outside the square anywhere, you don't get a point. But still, another circle comes up. Do it again, do it again, do it again, 5 minutes. He split the students into 3 groups. One group, he gave them nothing. Another group, he gave them $1 to be in the study. And another group, he gave them $5. And this is an old study, 20 years old, so $5 was a lot of money. What happened? Well, it turned out that 2 of the 3 groups were trying. One of the 3 groups was statistically significantly lower in how many times they could pull that circle into the square in 5 minutes. One of these 3 groups was not trying. So, if we were in a room, I'd ask you to raise your hands. Which group wasn't trying? $0, $1, or $5? I will tell you that most people pick $0. Then the second most common answer is $5, and the third most common answer is $1. He repeats the experiment. He does nothing. He does a chocolate bar, or he does a box of fancy Godiva chocolates. In this experiment, all 3 groups do the same. One group is not significantly better. I haven't told you which group, worse. I haven't told you which group was worse. Then he does the study again. Nothing. The chocolate bar with a 50-cent sticker on it, and the Godiva chocolates with a $5 sticker on it. Now, one group stops trying again. The question is, which group? It turns out that human beings respond to 2 kinds of incentives. One kind of incentive is a social incentive. We want to help mankind. We want to volunteer. We have a sense of altruism. This turns us on. Another kind of incentive is what we would call market incentives. Tangible things, things that we can count. Money being a great example. But it turns out we have to reach a threshold of money before we will pay attention. So it turns out that the $0 group was trying because of their sense of volunteering for this research project. The $5 group was also trying because the market incentive part of their brain had been turned on, and $5 was enough to make them pay attention. The group that did not try was the $1 group, because they couldn't get the sense of altruism because they were getting paid, but yet it wasn't enough to turn them on. And this is a huge mistake that people make all the time. Bonus systems, for example. People will give a bonus, and they can't understand why the bonus hasn't led to more engagement by their employees. Well, it's because normally the bonus is in the $1 group, okay? So let me give you a real-world example. 2009, Mayo Clinic, going through the recession, I am asked as chair to tell my staff, my consultants, my doctors, that because of the recession, there is a 0 salary increase. At the same time, the clinic is going to give all the paramedicals, the dental assistants, the receptionists, the lab technicians, they're all going to get a raise. But the doctors, you're going to get no raise. How many complaints do you think I got? The next year, coming out of the recession, the CEO of Mayo says to the chairs, I've got good news. You can go tell your consultants that we can give a raise again. We're through the recession. Thank them for their service last year. And the raise this year is going to be a 1% raise. How many people do you think complain? At Mayo Clinic, we are all salaried. There is no bonus system. Okay. So it turned out in 2009, when there was 0 raise, I got no complaints. In 2010, when I could tell my docs that we were getting a raise, 1%, I got a lot of complaints. Why? Why? Because in 2009, everybody was in the $0 group. They were willing to go with no raise out of a sense of altruism to help the clinic through a hard time. And to help our employees who were really desperate, many of whose spouses were losing jobs, to be able to be okay. In 2010, we gave them 1% raise. They couldn't get that sense of help. And then they turned around and they said, you mean after giving last year and going with no raise, you're going to give me a lousy 1% raise this year? Yeah, there's a learning. Just because you give a raise, it's not enough. Classic study out of Israel, daycare center, has a group of parents that will not show up on time to pick up their kids. And this daycare center doesn't want to just put these kids out on the street. But at the same time, they don't have employees who are supposed to stay that long. So they talk to the parents, they meet with the parents, they phone the parents, and some parents improve, but there's this group of parents, this recalcitrant group that keeps showing up 15 minutes late. So at their wits' end, not knowing what to do with these parents, they decided to get their attention and make them show up on time. Guess what? They're going to charge them for being late. And you know what happens? It gets worse. Instead of being 15 minutes late, these people are now 30 minutes late. What was the mistake? The mistake was that they didn't charge enough. The penalty was not significant enough. So earlier we talked about incentives. Here we're talking about disincentives for behavior, right? Works the same way. Because the amount of the charge was so small, these people said, oh, well, that's great. Now I can buy my guilt away. I'll just show up 30 minutes later and say, add it to my bill. The only reason they were showing up 15 minutes late was out of a sense of guilt. So you have to understand your goals relative to other people's goals. So in your life, in any team that you lead, in any environment you want to go into, you have a choice. You have to have a choice whether you are the type of person that really, really, really loves social outcomes and being in a group where social incentives matter, or whether you believe in market outcomes. Neither one of these is right or wrong, but don't kid yourself about which one of these you are. You know which one of these you are. And go find the people and the cultures that fit you. If you're running a practice and you want it to be about the patient, hire people for whom it's about the patient. If you hire people who are driven by market outcomes, it's not going to work. If you personally are driven by market outcomes, totally okay. Don't hire people that are driven by social, because working for you, they're going to hate it. And you're not going to like working with them either, because they're coming to work for different reasons than you. I did some moonlighting in LA as I was building my practice. This is what was in the board in the break room for the employees to see. Now, whether you believe in this or not, one thing I liked about this is that this practice was totally transparent. They were telling you exactly why they expected you to come to work every day. This was about market incentives and nothing else. If you do believe in social outcomes, how will you measure your success? Well, you're either going to measure it at the patient level or the employee level, or if you're in a university, student level. Okay? If you're in a market outcome environment, it's either going to be money, typically, or volume. You know, it could be practice revenue grant funding if it's money. It could be patient number or publications. I'm just picking things that allow you to measure something that is related to market and not social. I find that when people are socially incentivized, recognition is the most important way of telling people how much you appreciate them. If somebody is market-driven, then it's a reward system you need to set up. Okay? And again, in the longer version, we delve into this much more. I'll tell you that being transparent is super important. If you think you're going to get to where you want to go with a team by hoarding information, that's not true. Jan Carlson took over Scandinavian Airlines just before it was about to go bankrupt. People thought he was nuts for taking on the job. And he pulled him out of the fire. And when he was asked, why do you think you're able to do this? He said, if you don't tell people what's going on, you cannot expect them to be part of the solution. If you hide stuff from them, how can they maximally help? If you do tell people what's going on, they cannot expect to not be part of the solution. And again, I inherit this department at Mayo. We're not doing well financially. Bam, we hit a recession. I was very transparent with what was going on with the finances. And the department was amazing. They turned it around. And I'm convinced it's because we were transparent rather than saying, we need to do better, and not telling anybody why or not showing anybody any numbers. You can tell people what's going on, and it's a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness to do that. Okay, a couple of last things before we hit closing thoughts. The STS sandwich. Now, I hear these two phrases all the time. Everyone needs to be on the same page. And then I hear, diversity is critical to success. Well, they sound like competing themes. One's saying, no, everyone wants to be different. And the other one says, no, everyone wants to be the same. But we both think they're right? I mean, we think they're both right. So it's context. I think they're both right. I believe they're both right. But not in the same place at the same time for the same reason. When it comes to why you go to work every day, or why you get up in the morning, what is it that motivates you and you hang out with other people as part of a team? When it comes to the why, the values, the mission, and the goals, it is really important that you're all on the same page. When it comes to brainstorming, ideating, how are we going to achieve our mission and our goals? That's when diversity is important. Diversity of thinking. And diversity of thinking comes from people with diverse backgrounds and experiences, so they can bring all that to the table and lay that out on the table in an open environment that made the best idea win. Once you have decided what you're going to do as a group, and it comes to operations, you better be back on the same page. You can't have people at the operations level all going off doing the same thing. When you think about a policy manual or an operations manual or a procedure manual, why do you need a procedure manual? Well, you need it to tell people what to do. Yes. Well, why do you need to tell them what to do? We need to tell them what to do because you run the risk of people wandering off and doing their own thing. So this is the thing you come back to. This is, no, you can't go off and do that. This is how we want you to do it. It is a legislative document. If you have people who are on the same page when it comes to values and missions, your procedure manual probably needs to be this thick. When you have people who are all over the place when it comes to their values and missions and goals, that's when your procedure manual needs to be this thick, or maybe even multiple volumes, okay? The biggest mistake people make with teams is not their operations. It's that they put the wrong people on the team to begin with. You'll save yourself a lot of grief if you get the right people on the team. Understand this, employees don't quit their job, they quit their boss. Okay. And Richard Branson has a great quote, train people well enough that they can leave, treat people well enough that they don't want to. So if you're in a socially incentivized practice, team, treat people in a way that matters to them. If you're in a market incentivized practice or team, treat people well enough that matters to them. Okay, they won't leave. If you are in a socially incentivized practice and you're giving a market incentivized employee socially incentivized recognition, they don't care. They don't want this. They're going to leave. Okay? Vice versa. Do your employees' values match? Do you match? When you think about where you're working now, do you really fit? If you don't match on the left-hand scale here, the y-axis, and you're looking at an employee whose productivity is low, asking that employee to improve, and then if they don't, letting them go, it's not fun, but they're probably happy because they know they don't fit. The green employee is the person you want, right? The person who's very productive, but also fits your values. If you have an employee that has your values, they match, but they're not productive, because they have your values, you can probably move them over and make them more productive. This is the employee that kills you, the red employee. The person who's very productive, they get a lot of stuff done, but they actually don't fit your values. And because they're so productive, you don't want to let them go because you think, they're very productive. How am I going to replace what they bring? I will tell you this is a huge mistake. You have to work with this person and see if you can improve their behavior in a way that does make them align with your values. But if it doesn't, you have to let them go. Because in the long run, it doesn't work. My sister's a pediatric dentist. She has anywhere from about 10 employees. Every now and then, she has to let somebody go. And it's almost never about the productivity. It's almost always about the values. And when she does let them go, she told me once, the other employees come to her and they say, what took you so long? Why did you take so long to let this person go? Couldn't you tell they didn't fit? So you should do that. And she says, yeah, but they're doing so much. And I was worried that you'd all have to work harder until we found somebody. They're like, no, it's okay. Trust us. We're better off without this person than with them. About fit, not about productivity. There are three kinds of people in the world that you have to lead. Those who are with you, those who are against you, and those who don't care. And your job as a leader sometimes is to get those who are against you to not care. Right? So what do I mean by this? Well, imagine you're on a rowboat. When you all care and you're all rowing in the same direction, you're the coxswain at the head of this rowboat. You're setting the direction, and they are getting you to where you want to go. But let's say a couple of these people, they decide, I don't care anymore. And they just pick their oar out of the water and just hold it. Do you still move? Yeah, you still move. You move slower because now you got 6 people rowing instead of 8. Maybe even 4 people lift their oar out of the water. So you only have 4 people rowing. But the other 4 are just holding their oars out of the water. You still move, but you move more slowly. If one of these people decides to row the other way because they're against you, can you imagine what would happen? You're going nowhere. So that's why it's important sometimes the battle is not about getting someone to agree with you. It's about getting someone to not disagree. So when it comes to leading a group of people, direction of progress is more important than speed. Your job is to tell the boat where it's going as the leader. Okay? If they're all rowing in the same direction, but you're rowing the wrong way, it doesn't really help, right? Okay. Ego versus narcissism. Narcissists always talk about themselves. They fantasize about success. They think they're special. They think they need you to tell them how great they are. They actually think they're so special that the rules don't apply to them. They should have their own set of rules. They take advantage of other people. Other people are just commodities. They have very little empathy. And they're exceedingly jealous of people who have more power or more success or more whatever it is that matters to them. I will tell you that narcissists tend to be bullies. And it is very hard in organizational settings to manage narcissists because they're often incredibly bright and they know just how to kind of push the system to its edge without you being able to do anything. Now, it's going to sound like a harsh piece of advice for you, but if you come across a narcissist, you have to respect that they are very bright and very clever. And just wait. You just have to wait until they make a mistake that is so black and white. You can't go with a gray mistake because they're too smart. They'll talk their way out of it. You go with a black and white, clear mistake, and then you go for broke. Okay? The only thing a bully reacts to is a bigger bully. And so sometimes you have to be someone you don't want to be. But this is the hard part about leadership, one of the hard parts about leadership. Okay, closing thoughts. The optimist believes that we live in the best of all possible worlds, and the pessimist fears that this is true. I like this quote. I think it's kind of funny. But you have a choice whether to be an optimist in the world around you or whether to be a pessimist with the same facts, okay? And who would you rather be around? Well, you'd probably rather be around an optimist, and you are who people think you are. So you get to choose. Do you present an optimistic vision to the world, or do you present a pessimistic vision to the world? And one of the best ways that you can present an optimistic view to the world is that you try and change the world for the better. You try and make a difference. You don't accept the world the way it is. Now, the way it is, or the way it's been, is a place of reference. It is a place for you to have learned from. Remember, you've got wiser from all the things that happened in the past. But you don't stop there. You try and change the world for the better. The past is a place of reference. It is not a place of residence. Simple example. A group of us are trying to move the needle in terms of diversity in prosthodontics and leadership positions. We're looking at our own role as individuals and our own role as organizations in shaping prosthodontics. This paper is it's online now. It's not published fully, but you can access it online through the JPD website and through PubMed. We are trying to move the needle in the opportunities for women and non-white individuals so that maybe, just maybe, opportunities can become more equal for everybody to become leaders in prosthodontics. Okay, it's just our world. Now, am I going to try and do other things as well? Yeah, sure. But the point is that we're not going to leave the world as it was. Status quo is no good. Now, what if I fail? What if we fail? Well, that's okay. Failing is absolutely okay. I would regret not trying, and hopefully you will regret not trying. I don't fear failure. Mijin Choi said this line to me a few years ago. Mijin is actually a graduate of Dr. Driscoll's residency program at the University of Maryland. And I think it's a fantastic quote. I don't fear failure, I fear regret. I live my path, trying to take the path of least regret in my life. So when I look back, I will say, I am really glad I didn't do that. Harriet Beecher Stowe made this comment. She said, the bitterest tears shed over graves are for words left unsaid and deeds left undone. Think about that. It's what you don't say to people, and it's the things you don't do that you will regret later in life. Most people don't regret the things they do. They regret the things they don't do. I also think you have to understand that each of us has a time in the sun in our sweet spot. Once you leave your sweet spot, you've got to get out of the way, okay? Or else other people who are coming into their sweet spot can't change the world for the better. Tennyson said, all men must die, or the future will grow moldy. It will breed the past again. So, change for the better, aspirations and actions to improve the world. This is the key. This is how your life will matter. So I'm going to close with this quote. William Fagey used to be the head of the CDC in the US. He was the head of the CDC when smallpox was eradicated from the globe. I heard him give a speech to a group of medical students who were graduating 3 years ago. And he gave them 7 things to live their lives by. And this is the last one. He said, today you are graduating from medical school. You are about to embark on your residencies. Then you will do fellowships. You will get jobs. You will become physicians. You will move. You will settle down. You will have family. You will put down roots. And when someone says to you, where is your home? You will say, my home is Los Angeles, or it's Pretoria, or it's Cairo. Okay? He says, that is the wrong answer. I want you to realize that home is not where you are from. As a physician, as a healthcare provider, as a healer, as a human, home can never be where you are from. Home is where you are needed. That is where you belong. So I hope you enjoyed the presentation there. A lot of philosophy, hopefully a little bit of passion, and hopefully a little bit of inspiration that you can set different dreams or set different goals for yourself and try and make an even bigger difference than you thought you were going to make. You can really have tremendous impact. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Koka. I mean, every time Dr. Koka comes here, I leave here with new words, with new things to learn. I've learned today about the sweet spot, how to stretch it, and to do, because you're going to be faced with all kinds of decisions. What kind of organization you want to work for? You want to work for a corporate group, or you want to work for, a small, because they are driven by different goals. They are driven by social incentives and market incentives. Yeah, so there are two different things. There's some places I've worked, I'm like, you know what, I cannot cope here because the incentives, it's not about making more money, it's about caring about people, and it just didn't sync with me. You know, you have put it together in a very nice way. This is my hope. I have a dream. I want to share with you my dream. Dr. Koka, thank you so much for that. Dr. Fabarani, we're going to call on you as very shortly in the next couple minutes. But I have a dream here, and I'm not afraid to, you know, you're looking at, like Dr. Koka, you mentioned, regrets. I don't want to regret anything. I'm just gonna try. You know, because if you don't try, then I'll be full of regret if I don't even make an effort. You know, right. This incentive to teach dental students in Africa implant dentistry was a thought that I had in my basement. And here we are. Over 800 people have turned in from 35 countries. I could have said it's not possible. Somebody says, who do you think you are? What makes you think this is possible? But here am I, and I'm here again saying, what is the future of dental implant education in Africa? You know, what can we do about it? I'm a resident. I don't have any resources, but I believe that we can talk about it. And with lectures like this from Dr. Koka, I mean, it's going to be available on YouTube. You should go back and, you know, find, as a dentist, you should sit down and think and plan and ask yourself, who am I? You know, and these talks help to put your thoughts together, so that, because if every dental student in Africa or around the world, you know, where am I needed? Home is where I'm needed. You know, I don't know if I'm needed here, but you know, right now I think, you know, African dental schools need, you know, some help with their implant education. It's a great need, and I'm hoping that we can brainstorm about it. And I'm going to have a Zoom meeting very soon for us to just meet and talk, especially faculty members in all the Nigerian universities. I'm calling to you. I want to sit with you. I don't have the resources, but I have an idea, and I have people like Dr. Koka, the president of the International College of Dentists, is on our side, and somehow I'm sure we can find a way to do what we do. Thank you so much, Dr. Koka. Tomorrow we're going to have Dr. Cortez and Dr. Yuan. They are both graduates from the University of Michigan. The University of Michigan is close to our hearts. This is where we are from, and this is where this program is turned out from. They'll be here tomorrow, and we want to see Okpeyemi Okioso. Thank you for sending us your wonderful. She's a model. She's a dentist, but she's also a model. I saw her on the billboard in Nigeria when I was going to school. I'm like, wow, okay, well, can you come and take a picture for us? You know, somehow we are able to draw everybody together, and we're going to call on Dr. Koka. You know, thank you. I don't know what to say. You know, thank you for being a big, big, big brother.
Oh, Uvoh, I will tell you, just said something where I'm going to challenge you. You said, I don't have anything to offer. And I will say you have the two things that level 5 leaders have. You have perseverance, you don't quit, and you have humility. So you actually have the two most important resources. And people will believe in you. And it's kind of scary to have a colleague of mine. She is the vice president of hardware engineering at Apple. And she used to be an engineer, and now she's a leader. And she said, at some point in my life, I had to accept that I was a more effective leader than I was an effective engineer. And some people just have leadership skills. And you know, you may choose to live your life and make a difference as a prosthodontist, but you're probably one of these people that should think about living your life as a leader. And it's a different mindset, but go for it.
I have a question here. Someone said, why is it that most I don't want to misquote. Let me go back to the question. It said, why is it that most CEOs? Can you see the question on the Q&A? There's a Q&A that says why most successful CEOs.
That's a great question. So there is actually research that shows that CEOs on average have a higher level or higher rating on the sociopath scale, and that is because, in my opinion at least, the organizations in which they do well tend to be market incentive, highly competitive, not so collaborative organizations. So in those organizations, that kind of behavior actually gets them ahead. So again, you get to choose which organization you want to be in. But there are other organizations that have figured out how to blend a collaborative environment and still be very successful. Mayo Clinic is a really good example, actually, where you can collaborate and you can actually, I think, be the best. Kate at Apple says to me all the time, Sree, the two most important things in an organization to be successful, a culture of teamwork and a culture of innovation. Innovation, she says, without teamwork is no good. So organizations that probably don't have as much of an emphasis on teamwork they sort of promote people being mean, right? Because you can get away with that behavior.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Koka. It has been a wonderful time. We're going to move all the way.
Healing Hands Health Society presents Dental Webinar Series. We have planned a series dental webinars to keep you abreast of current practice. This series on prosthodontics will be via Zoom, Facebook Live. Presenters are drawn from dental schools in the USA, private practitioners from around the world. To register for future webinars, visit www.hhands.org/dental-training. For future inquiries, contact Facilitator